Hey, Donna, and no, how are you guys doing? You guys about ready?
Yes, I think we're just waiting till 6 o'clock sharp. And let me see. Let me just go through my checklist and I'll get back with you.
Okay.
Thanks. Sean, the only one I'm waiting on is Tune, but we do have a quorum if you wanted to call the meeting to order.
We'll give Tim a minute, and then
Okay,
since we
very
have a
good.
quorum. All right, everybody. I think we'll go ahead and get this show rolling. Oh, wait, look at that. There we go. There's Tung. So let's see. Start out with roll or call to order. So let's see. This is October 5th, 2021, Planning Board meeting. And can we get a roll call, Donna, please?
Thanks, Sean. Andy Mefford said he would not be able to attend. I didn't hear from Jim Bashan, so he's absent as well. Josh Schrader.
Here.
Josh Schrader is present. Dave Loomis.
Here.
Dave Loomis is present. Micah Sewell.
Here.
Micah Sewell is present. Neva Hassanen.
Present.
Neva Hassanen's present. Toon Pham.
Here.
Toon Pham is present. Shane Morrissey.
Here.
Shane Morrissey's present. Ellie Costello.
Present.
Ellie Costello's present. Sean McCoy.
Present.
Sean McCoy is present. Mr. Chair, I have 6 regular members and 1 alternate present. Would you like to appoint Ms. Costello as a regular voting member tonight?
Please.
Thank you.
All right, so our next order of business is approval of the minutes from the September 7th, 2021 planning board meeting. I don't know, looked pretty straightforward. I read over that. That was a big review. That's an important piece of property. If nobody's got any changes or recommendations, motion, and we'll move on.
I'll move that we approve the minutes.
Second,
Second.
Neva seconded. And we'll just take a yay or nay vote. All those in favor?
Yay.
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 Aye.
And that seemed unanimous. And they're approved. And then, oh, I got a little bug flying around in here. It's that time of season. Fruit flies are everywhere. Let's see. So next, do we have announcements or do we have to do public comment first? Excuse me. So this next public comment is just a general public comment period. If anybody wants to get on and have a general say about anything in particular, for those joining in, if you're there, you can join in via our webinar, which is at the city's website, or you can call in by phone. The numbers are Oh, there's all sorts of numbers here. 1-253-215-8782 or 213-338-8477. That's for cell phones. Landline users can use 1-888-475-4499. Webinar ID is 842-9399-6424. I can repeat that. Webinar ID 842-9399-6424. The password is 999636. You can press *9 to raise your hand or *6 to mute and unmute. Please try and remember, if you call in or are on the line in some way, to mute whatever you're watching, listening to, because there will be an echo and it'll reverberate. And I don't see anybody in the queue, but we'll give it 2-3 minutes and see if anybody calls in. Doesn't really feel like anybody's going to be calling in on this day, at least to me. If we get somebody that calls in here while we're progressing along, then we'll halt. But otherwise, I think we'll try and move forward. We have a fairly straightforward evening tonight. So the next agenda item is staff announcements from Bailey.
Good evening, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. So I had my monthly memo attached into your packet. We definitely have some things coming up here, starting the next couple meetings, as I mentioned previously that they would. So far November or December, I don't think there's much on there, but more things are always coming in. One update I did get from after the packet was done was about an update for the long range transportation plan that you guys saw in September. John did email me and say that item had a public hearing is going to be set or is set for October 25th with the city. And then final consideration would be November 1st. And then they're also going to talk to us about when, because the commissioners also have to review that and update it. So it's working its way through the process and probably will come up again here. So I'll make sure to fix that. And then the only other thing is something you guys will have to deal with after Ben's special presentation, and that's that Vince resigned. He moved out of state, and so we have to elect a new chair this evening. Yay us. So be thinking of that while we're listening to Ben presentation, and just kind of thinking of if anybody's interested. I have not talked to Sean yet either, so I won't put him on the spot, but then we'll deal with that later this evening as well. So I'll be staying on till the end of the meeting for that. So.
Well, and I guess if I can just add for folks to think about as far as the election of an officer goes, in my mind, ideally, we need to elect somebody. We need to do something tonight. Because I should be available for the next meeting, I think, but I'm kind of approaching the time of year when I go into the woods, and I'm going to need some help as far as that goes. So ideally, we can make that happen tonight in some way. So hopefully somebody's ready to do that. All right, let's move on here to the public hearing. Oh, The
Excuse me.
presentation is next. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, quick question. Where did Vince go? I
He
missed something.
he moved to Brooklyn.
Brooklyn.
I think he was following his, I think, girlfriend, significant
Oh,
other
right.
person.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That explains it.
he also accepted a position with a company called VEIC. It's a clean energy consulting firm and
Cool.
relocated to Brooklyn.
Oh, well,
Um,
all the best wishes to him. He was a great chair, and
Yeah.
Sean,
Agreed.
he'll be a terrific chair too. But thanks for letting me know.
Okay, let's move on. So the next thing here is public hearings. And that should be the communication and presentation, special presentation next, if I'm not mistaken. And that's Benjamin Brewer presenting, I believe.
That's right. That's me. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. I see heads nodding. And yeah, just to clarify on that, this is a special presentation, not a public hearing tonight. And that's big news about losing Vince. So I'm sorry to hear that. And if some of you are distracted while I'm talking, I'll know why while you're mulling over what to do about it. So I'm going to share my screen here and give a presentation for you, and then I'm hoping that leads to some questions or conversation with you tonight. I am aiming to keep this around 45 minutes. Does that sound like something that works for you tonight or for the agenda?
Do what you gotta do, Ben.
Okay, I'll try to be brief as I can, but there's kind of a lot to go over in some ways. So let me get set up here. All right. Can you see the PowerPoint that went up now?
Mhm.
You can. Okay. The way this is set up, I cannot see you. So while I'm giving the presentation, it's all I can see. So if there's things that come up or questions or raised hands, just let me know and or out loud, and I'll stop so we can address anything. And I'm happy to take questions as I go along, but this is all kind of building towards something, so it'll become clearer as we get farther along into it as well. So I am presenting to you tonight on the 5-year review that we have done on the city's growth policy, the R. Missoula City Growth Policy 2035. My name is Ben Brewer, and I'm a supervisor in the community planning division of community planning, development, and innovation. So state law requires that every 5 years a growth policy is reviewed, and that's set up in the state code that for how you set up your growth policy, including a timetable for reviewing the growth policy at least once every 5 years and revising the policy if necessary. And so that's kind of where this all builds towards is doing a review and determining whether revisions or updates are necessary. So that's where we see this headed. Per what state law requires, within our growth policy, we have a procedure and set of review criteria for what a review would entail. So just to be real clear from the beginning, this project is specifically a review. We're not in any sort of update to the growth policy currently, but we're using this, state mandated process as an opportunity and for, if nothing else, to step back and take stock and review and evaluate and analyze the growth policy and really see if it's still headed in the right direction and reflects the community's vision, and and then this review should lead to a determination on whether any changes to the growth policy are warranted. And I'll just put out a spoiler right from the beginning. Our determination is that yes, there are changes and updates that are warranted and work to the growth policy that would be beneficial. So I'm going to step back and just to give a little foundational information. A lot of you probably know a lot of this, and so apologies if this is repeating things you know already, but I think it's helpful to just kind of have this background. What I'm going to go through what a growth policy is and what is in our specific growth policy, just real quick here. So, growth policy is it's the foundational policy that cities use in Montana to implement land use strategies and to set up regulations. A growth policy is a required document in order to implement zoning, and it's a policy that's generally responsible for guiding planning for future urban growth over the next 20 years. Oh, sorry about that. And so, in general, it's a key policy for guiding growth and coordinating other policies that are adopted in the city, especially as regards growth and development. And so, just to point out that the city's webpage for where you can find the growth policy is listed here, and it's basically made up of two materials. It's the growth policy document itself, and then the future land use map, which is the land use designation map, which applies recommendations for land uses to the area. So our specific growth policy, our Missoula growth policy, is organized in the following way. These are basically the chapters of the growth policy. So if you look up the growth policy and read through it, this is how it's set up. It has an introduction that sets it up and presents a vision statement and talks about how it's organized, and provides some discussion of the public participation, which went into developing the growth policy, which was a lot. And then the bulk of the document are the 6 elements chapters. And so the actual policy statements for the growth policy are found in these chapters. This is what contain the goals and objectives that inform the proposed actions. The next chapter are, and I should read through those elements are listed here, but they're divided or organized by livability, safety and wellness, economic health, housing, community design, and environmental quality. And those are kind of how the document is organized as far as policy goes. The actions and outcomes chapter lists two or includes 2 lists of actions or proposed actions. One is our priority actions, and then there's another full set of actions that's quite a bit more extensive. There's a land use recommendations chapter that ties in directly to the land use map, and includes description of the different land uses that are recommended, and guidance for how they might be implemented through zoning. A cooperation and coordination chapter that talks about how this can the growth policy can work amongst different jurisdictions. A chapter that guides developing subdivision regulations, and then the growth policy amendment processes chapter, and that is the section that includes the guidance on how to conduct this review. So that's basically the organization and content of our growth policy. Beyond that, if you open the growth policy, there's quite a bit more to see, and a lot of that are the appendices that are included with the policy, and these are inform how the growth policy was developed, and there's some a lot of interesting reports and and whatnot. There was a asset mapping program that was done, or project that was done as part of developing the growth policy. It's interesting, and a full public participation rundown. But the bulk of this is the community profile, which includes the data and demographic information that informs the development of the growth policy. And then finally, the other kind of main material is the map itself. And again, that's informed by the land use recommendations chapter. That's what guides you on how to kind of interpret what the map is indicating. And that there's an interactive map that you can use on the city website called the What's My Zoning map, where you can also see the land use map, and that's also available on the city webpage. And just a note to be a reminder, I guess, that you know, in the growth policy, there's also a targeted amendment process, or a process. It specifies a process for amending this map, and that has happened, you know, several times over the last few years, which you've been involved with as those have come through. So I'm going to move on to the review itself, and talk through what was identified and what we found. These are the review criteria that are listed in the growth policy, and so we based our review around them. I'm not going to read through them here because we're going to go through each one here, but I'll just kind of describe the who did the review up to this point, which was basically the planners in this community planning section that conducted the review, and with assistance and support from a interdepartmental functional work group, which was used really for guidance and support on kind of working through what came out of the review. And so those up until now, that's who's been involved in this. It's been an internal review by kind of staff within CPDI and with assistance from other departments. And now is kind of the period where we're in more of the public input phase and public presentation. So I'm going to run through the review criteria here one at a time and share what kind of came out of that with you. The first was, were there any changes in the legal framework regarding growth policy or its implementation? This one was fairly easy and self-explanatory. There have not been any kind of changes at the state level that would change or alter how we implement or view the growth policy. The next criteria are whether significant changes in existing conditions and projected trends have occurred. And again, this is looking back over the last 5 years. The growth policy was adopted in 2015, so the period of time between now and then. And we basically interpreted this criteria as any changes that would apply to the community profile, or what is included in the community profile. And to some degree that's difficult to answer because census information is only starting to become available now. But we do have indications of trends and potential changes in conditions through a variety of recent planning efforts that have been conducted over the last few years, as well as surveys that have been carried out. One of those is a resident survey that the city carries out every year. I just thought I'd put this up there to highlight some of what it shows, but which is basically that housing has been and continues to be and to be increasingly a seen as the most pressing problem or issue in the area. And then this this the out of the categories included in this, that there's quite a jump in the degree to which homelessness and poverty are seen as being major issues compared to even just 3 years ago. And so that, this is one amongst several indicators or things we can base some assumptions on, but there are several kind of pressing issues or problems or challenges that we kind of incorporated into our review as what are really rising to the surface and need to be examined. And those really kind of came down to housing and affordability, climate, and equity. And so those were what we were focusing on in the review. And those also are informed by a variety of planning processes that have happened or been conducted over the last few years, including the housing policy that was developed a few years ago, the Swift-Duquesne Area Master Plan and Form-Based Code, Climate Ready Missoula Resiliency Plan, Long Range Transportation Plan, Missoula Urban Area Open Space Plan, and so on and so forth. And later on in the presentation, I'll kind of go through the list of all of the plans and policies that have been developed over the last 5 years. There are quite a few. It's very impressive, I think. But all of those have included, quite a bit of input and engagement in and amongst themselves, and so that's really been we use that to inform kind of the basis for what we found out of this. I'm gonna run through a few criteria here in this next slide. The first is changes in the circumstances upon which the goals and objectives are based on. We interpreted this as kind of the factors or the context that informs the growth policy. So, and really, we didn't find that had changed necessarily, or that there were many new factors to consider, as much as that several of those have really been heightened or become more urgent. And but our finding was generally that those are more or less consistent with when the growth policy was first adopted. The next criteria was changes in community goals, and those are, we saw those as perceived changes in the goals themselves that the community would, wants or envisions happening. And again, we didn't see that those really had changed much from 5 years ago, but that the urgency for some of them has increased. And of course, there's nuances to them where there are, more is known about some things, or some specifics kind of jump out. But in general, we saw those as being fairly consistent. One element of that or that did present itself that is arguably not included in the growth policy as much as it should be is looking at equity within the community, and so that was a finding in the report. And then finally, is a criteria on this page, the degree to which meeting goals and objectives have been met. And we looked at that as what policies and plans and the implementation of them have been developed or are progressing. And again, they're just the sheer volume of policies that have been adopted recently since 2015 is there is impressive or is telling, but the finding that we drew out of the review was that it was more on the implementation side of those that we need to look at more closely. Moving on, the next criteria was the completion of implementation strategies. And we looked at this as the basically an update to our whether our priority actions have been implemented or not. And we presented a report at the middle of 2019 that provided an update on our priority actions and the status of where they were as far as implementation goes. And that's presented in the middle column there. And then for this project, updated those as best we could to present day. And so we divided those into different kind of statuses. At the top would be ongoing and actions have been completed. That's kind of the most implemented category that we have, and then moving down to ongoing with new actions not yet completed, ongoing with no new actions, and then not really anything happening, not ongoing or no new actions. And but what we found was that as far as our priority actions that are listed in the growth policy, we've really by this point done a pretty good job of implementing them to some degree or another. That most of them fall into that most implemented category. Not to say that we don't have more work to do, but that was the finding that came out of kind of updating those specifically. Now the priority action list is a subset of the full action list, which we'll get to in a second. But so it really focuses on a specific set of actions that that were called out during the growth policy development process. We also divided these up or looked at them as far as how do they relate to the different elements themselves, to try to get a sense of whether there are any kind of elements that are not receiving enough as much attention or potentially falling behind to some degree as far as implementation goes. And for the most part, we're maintaining consistency with throughout those, but the resilient community and was probably the set of actions that may need some more looking at. And the next criteria would be the deviation from the implementation table. And so this is looking at the timetable that's prescribed in the growth policy. And this is a little complicated, but the timetable designations are distributed for the full set of actions. And so of which there are quite a few. There's something like 270 proposed actions that the growth policy includes. And so, pretty much all of the priority actions are included in that near-term category. And that's, aiming to be done within a few years. The midterm category is looking to, reach these within, at least 5 years, and long term is beyond that. And so we for this review, limited our update of the actions implementation to the priority actions list, following on what had been done in 2019. And part of the reason for this was that as we were reviewing the document, it was becoming more and more clear that the sheer volume of actions was worth looking at and potentially reevaluating, as well as the kind of organization of the document as a whole. And so we, because we anticipate and kind of propose as part of this to rework those actions and make them kind of more streamlined and more user-friendly and targeted and whatnot. We didn't go to the extent of updating the entire set of actions, but it is something that we I think should get more attention moving forward from this review. And then finally, these are the last two criteria. The one is public input suggesting the need to make changes. And again, we viewed this as being informed by recent planning efforts and the public input that was collected through those. But also, that we would bring in comment and input through this review project itself. And I'm going to walk through some of that, what we did receive a little later here, but yeah, I would say, part of the challenge of this and part of what came out of looking at the sheer kind of volume of policy efforts that that the city has been engaged in with and working with the county as well is kind of the next stage or step maybe to kind of make sense of those and coordinate between them, especially as far as how it's incorporated or not into the growth policy. And finally, final criteria is the knowledge of specific and identifiable amendments that would improve the growth policy's usefulness so that it better serves the public, which really was led to what our list of recommendations for updates to the growth policy that's included in the report. And basically there were things that we knew going into this that we were wanting to kind of take a look at, and then things that also came out through the review, and that we are hearing and want to hear through comment and whatnot, as far as what what may need to be refined in the policy. So the final, where did this lead to, or what did the review determine? Our determine is essentially basically that updates are warranted, and that there is work to be done in the growth policy that we propose and hope to move towards in the future, in the near future. And then along with, so basically that's a summary of what was included in the report. We did a review report to convey this basically and record it. And then along with that, we include a series of supplemental materials that kind of tie into and form that report. So the first one of these, and these are listed as appendices in the report. The first one is a list of, given that we are determining or recommending, that some updates be pursued with the growth policy. The first, appendix or material is a general or a list of general recommendations for what those updates should be. We also collated a list of the adopted policies and plans that have occurred since 2015. That was part of this review. We also updated that implementation timetable review that was given in 2019 to be current with today. And so that we in this presentation and in the report, it gives kind of a very kind of general summary table of what actions have been implemented and kind of to what degree. But this Appendix C supplement lists specifically what the ways in which those actions are being implemented. We'll include a public comment summary with the report in its final form. And this was just updated today to be available to you, and has been updated on the Engage Missoula site. I'm going to walk through kind of some of the general themes that we received so far, and how to comment and everything in a little while. But by the time this report is finalized, we'll include a public comment summary, and then finally, these final appendix or supplements informed our process for this. So we include the memo that was sent to Planning Board at the end of 2020 that talked about needing to delay this project due to the pandemic. We include the city's strategic plan, which really ties into the growth policy and what we were reviewing for, and then finally the review criteria itself. And if it's all right at this point, I wanted to jump over to the Engage Missoula page for this project to just make it clear where all of this is and how to access it. Can everybody see the Engage Missoula page?
Yep.
All right, great, thank you. And so this, for those of you tonight or whoever may be watching that aren't familiar with this site, this is where the city has been using as the kind of primary landing page for ongoing projects that are of interest, and as a means to provide, or as a way to provide a way to engage on those projects and learn about them, be educated, informed, and interact and comment and whatnot. So this project is one of those, or is included on the Engage Missoula site. And if you open that page, it will take you to the project page. And basically, most of what I've been talking about is contained in these review materials here. So they're broken out between the review report itself and then the individual appendices, which you can open individually. All right, so I was going to go through the just kind of generally what's included in our recommendations for updates. Are there any questions so far, or does anyone want to take a break, or are we okay to keep moving here?
I haven't seen any questions. Is everybody good?
All right, I'll just keep at it here.
Keep rolling.
Okay, so again, these are listed in Appendix A, which is our list of recommendations for updates. I wanted to kind of walk through it with this group, especially to set this up a little bit. We broke this out into three kind of categories that made sense to us. And the first is technical kind of maintenance type changes to the document itself. And one of those includes a pretty large component, which is updating the community profile. And I think we're just starting to see data becoming available. And so this is work that will be happening or is be continue happening here fairly soon. Other recommendations were to look at refining and reorganizing how the actions are, or the actions themselves, including what's included in them as well as how they're organized. We also want to look at streamlining the document and in a way that especially is organized around the elements and ties back into that way of organizing it. And then just more kind of maintenance things like updating for new terms and departments and whatnot. The next category was the policy itself, which we think there's room for looking at some potential modifications and work to. One of those is incorporating the OMDG, that's the Our Missoula Development Guide report that was last published, I think, in 2018, into the community profile itself, and also into land use recommendations, and kind of leaning on that report more within the policy. We are recommending evaluating and considering updates and changes to the land use map. and as well as considering and evaluating updates to the land use designation section. We are proposing clarifying how issue and neighborhood plans inform the growth policy and vice versa. So how they, again, that goes back to kind of coordinating between these various policies that we have produced over, especially recently. And then finally, to better address equity in the growth policy. And then the final bucket that we organized this through was to was kind of the implementation itself of the growth policy, and that ties into the usability of it as well. And we have a few, or just to clarify, these are this is a summary of what's included in the appendix of the list itself. So these are kind of dumbed down, but this is just to kind of summarize what is in there. But as far as implementation and usability go, we want to at least explore an enhanced web presence, something we've been looking into as part of this, which ties into usability. We are working on already and want to create a growth policy user guide, something that we've heard a need for. We want to look at establishing some kind of an ongoing implementation team or talking about what that would look like. Looking at improving our data availability and usability, including developing and improving our key performance indicators, and then increasing public participation and engagement with things related to the growth policy. I wanted to walk through a little bit of the public comment that we received through the Engage Missoula site. And again, the appendix that is dedicated to summarizing public comment has been updated on the Engage Missoula page to include everything that we've received so far, at least as of yesterday. But in general, we received some kind of interaction from over 60 people, including participating in kind of a survey called a quick poll, but then also receiving some comments and ideas for innovation and inspiration. We also, and so that's kind of the most engaged that someone can be with the page. That's someone who actually gives us a comment or interacts, or indicates what they are thinking. We also had more people that came in and downloaded some the documents or visited the page and looked through what was on it, and then finally the people that kind of do a glance was more like a little under 200 people. And the quick poll or the survey that we put on the page was trying to kind of get a read on what people are thinking is some of the more pressing issues and that the community is experiencing, and by far the most that was identified is housing and cost of living. And so this the other options were impacts related to climate change, which is the kind of mustard colored wedge. Limited economic opportunity is the purple. Community change related to growth and development is the pink, and then all of the above is this blue here. So you see kind of all of those having some connection to a fair amount of people as well. And then this is another point where I just I think it'll be for those of you that may still want to comment or have ideas of engaging that are watching tonight. Again, this is the Engage Missoula page, Engage Missoula page dedicated to this project. And at the bottom of the page, we have 4 tools or ways to comment, which includes this survey called a quick poll, again, you can see the results that come up kind of on a to-the-minute basis. And then there's also room for public comment that can come in, a separate tool for ideas that are more about kind of inspiration and innovation that you can upload videos or images and whatnot if you have ideas of things that we should be considering. And finally, there's an interactive mapping tool where you can go in and put a pin on a part of the city or a specific land use designation and provide comments to us through that as well. And just finally, I wanted to talk about some of our next, what we see as next steps coming out of this, and to give a sense of where this might be headed. This is our kind of our one way of depicting what we're thinking here, and it's broken up between the growth policy review itself, which is at the top, and we are to the end of to the final stages of that, where we're presenting on this to planning board, and then we'll aim to follow up coming out of this presentation to report to the Land Use and Planning Committee, City Council later in October. And then our hope is to, as we move out of this review phase to pending that we kind of hear concurrence from you and from those in City Council that this is a direction we should be headed in, that we want to start focusing on the work coming out of this. And so here it's kind of broken up in a few different categories as far as growth policy, education, and outreach, and that's where we see that user guide coming into play and being used as a tool to improve the usability and inform people on what is in the growth policy and how it can be interpreted and things like that. And then growth policy amendments themselves, and that's going to be, we see that still interacting with this functional work group that we've been working with on this, and near term we're looking at the community profile update and the OMDG updates. Hope if not ending this year, ending soon at the beginning of next year, and then the additional amendment work is going to be parsed out of that, the list that we provided, and whatever else is identified as what should be looked at and included. And then the next category here is the comprehensive code reform project, and that's something I haven't really talked about much yet, but is very much tied to what we do and when we do potential updates to the growth policy, and we look at them being fairly intertwined. And so that project is in the RFP development stage now, and will hopefully begin its first phase of a code and regulations to policy audit, hopefully starting sometime at the end of this year, early next year. And then just to point out that there are other related projects as far as updating subdivision regs to reflect recent state law changes, on a transportation options action plan and recommendations report that's currently being developed that will influence this, and what as well, developing housing incentives project, and those are ongoing. And so to some degree there's also a lot of balls in the air that we'll be needing to coordinate with as well. So that's what I had for you tonight, and I know it's kind of a lot to go through. I guess I would point again to the report itself and those supplemental materials. Everything is presented and verbalized much better than I'm doing tonight, probably, but that is the kind of the meat of the the project and includes what came out of it and what our findings are. But the planning board is you're the steward of the growth policy, and so we're pretty excited to see if you have any thoughts on this, and this is an opportunity for us to really check in with you as well specifically, and to see if you have thoughts on whether we're in the zone, if we're hitting the mark or potentially missing some things, and or on the right track or not. And again, this is also an opportunity to hear more from the public if there are comments that come in tonight as well, and those will be combined and into the final report as it moves forward. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen if that's all right, so I can see you, and then see if you have any questions or comments.
Does anybody have any questions for Ben? All right, I was dealing with a light issue, so I didn't see what order. Oh, they're going up and down faster than I can keep track. I'm gonna just start with Ellie here. Ellie, you had a question.
Thank you, Ben. You mentioned updates to the land use map. How would those what's the process for making those updates, and how would you be assessing? Can you just tell me more about that and tell us more about that?
Yeah, I think that I think it's generally, we're assuming that as part of the code reform project, that there will be evaluation of either our zoning and how it's applied, or the land use map that is the basis for what the zoning is and how it's applied, or both, and then some updates and changes accordingly, depending on what comes out of that analysis. And so, again, this is going to tie into this code reform project pretty closely. The way that I understand that project and that we've been hearing about it is that that it'll be contain a few phases. The first of which is an audit that really is meant to evaluate where we are aligned and misaligned between our codes and our policies, and so what that points to we don't know yet, so we need to wait until we see what comes out of the audit, and then there's going to be a big conversation happening here as well that is going to need to kind of determine what the next steps that coming out of that are, what that points us to. And I would just say, and the map is part of that conversation.
Just to follow up, how does the updates to the land use map here interact with the county rezones that are all of that's happening currently?
Yeah, so one of our recommendations that's specific to looking at the city's land use designation map or recommendation map is to kind of get into and grapple with what do we do when the city's map that extends outside of the city limits, the portion of the city's map that's in the county conflicts with the county's map, and can we resolve that to some degree, or at least kind of establish a basis of how we operate when there are differences between the two. And that's a big it's kind of a big policy question, and there's political question and everything that, but I think that that is a, you know, something that would be a benefit, I think, and would get into a lot of these challenges that we're kind of focusing on as far as housing and housing supply, and then some of these other factors that play into that. So.
Awesome. Thanks you, Ben. And I think Toon was next.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Ben. Yeah, the report was very comprehensive. It was so I appreciate all the work on that. I had three questions. One kind of abstract, a little bit more high level. So starting with that, can you provide a sense of sort of progress, if you will? I know that there was like a lot of numbers around items, and you gave statuses on that, but can you give a general sense of sort of how far along? Like, are you happy with the progress that has been made so far, or is it behind schedule, or potentially even ahead of schedule? Like, can you give a sense for that? Because there was a lot of numbers and a lot of updates, but I wasn't sure what that meant overall.
Yeah. I think that I just based on what was included, or what we were able to include for this review, that that was a good sign. That as many as we found, at least of the priority actions, had been, for the most, mostly implemented, or are being implemented in some way. I think that we are really recognizing, coming out of this, and working with this functional working group, that they're not planners necessarily. They're working in other fields that are kind of coming in as with their own perspective, and kind of fresh eyes to the growth policy in some ways, and it's it's an ambitious policy and document, and I think there, after kind of going through this, there's clearly ways that it could be clarified and more made to be more usable, and so that was more kind of where we found, as far as not necessarily that actions aren't being implemented, is that there are redundant actions, or there's like redundancies between the objectives and the actions, or it's kind of, some of them are just saying, pointing to the same thing, saying it different ways, and that it would be helpful to kind of hone in on what we're actually wanting to achieve, and how that's, and kind of simplify how we say that.
Great, thank you. That's super helpful. And then a couple of other questions. So obviously, this wasn't in the report, but you sharing the survey data, that was incredibly helpful. So given the rise of homelessness and poverty as an issue that's clearly affecting, or top of mind for some folks, has there been discussion of addressing that more explicitly? A lot of the language and action items, if you will, were around affordable housing, but obviously affordable housing and poverty and homelessness are all very different things, or can be addressed different ways. So is that going to be something that is going to be updated in the growth policy?
We didn't call that out specifically in our in the list of recommendations. That wasn't something that we specifically pointed to. I think my thinking on that is that it ties into housing more generally, and that if housing is, that there's a housing availability crisis and affordability or crisis levels, that necessarily impacts the sorry, you jumped on me. The prevalence of homelessness and issues with homelessness, but again, this is a chance. This is for us an opportunity to hear, from you and from this group, on whether there's things that we're not including that we should. So it's something we can look at whether it fits in with that, and it should be called out specifically, or not.
Yeah, at least from my perspective, and I'm by no means an expert, but I think the challenges around affordable housing are obviously they're related, but I think there's a different set of challenges with respect to homelessness and poverty in particular. So consider that my feedback to that. And along those same lines, last comment question here. And this is just kind of a in the moment type of thing, but has there been any discussion around air quality as an issue in Missoula as a whole? I mean, it's obviously been air quality is a constant issue, but in light of both smoke as well as sort of the increased scrutiny around air quality in a world of COVID, is that something that we need to take a closer look at from a building code perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the types of things that for us we see as coming in or receiving that input through things like the climate action plan process and other others of those plans and policies related to climate change, climate resilience, and preparing for more extreme weather events and things like that, as well as I know the county also did a wildfire preparedness plan, and so I think what the part of the idea here is that that's one issue and an example of an issue that is that's been identified as being of importance and that we've developed policies towards, but it's not necessarily being implemented through regulations yet or through specific codes. And so again, the part of the setup or part of the approach or the primary approach, I guess, for this code reform project is that we've done all this policy work and really put a lot into that, but it's not really reaching the ground yet. It's not being implemented, and so our codes are falling behind the policies that we've been adopting. And so the idea is that we can kind of screen our codes as they stand now through the various policies and including for climate or based on that plan or other these various policies that we've adopted, and then identify what modifications, tweaks, just fully new codes are needed in order to implement the policies.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. I think Neva, you had your hand up. Do you still got a question?
I do. Actually, I don't know if it's a question. Okay, I'll ask it as a question, but I have a comment later because I was involved in the development of the Missoula growth policy, and I would say that, as an old lady, well, or feeling old, that it was the best public policy process that I have ever been through. And if you go back and you look at the record, you'll find that I said that to Tom Zavitz and Laval Means and to Mayor Engen. And it's an amazing document if you take the time to look at it. And so here's my question, Ben, and it goes back, hang with me here, but Ellie asked a really good question. Okay, how does this relate to the county growth policy, the land use element that is going to soon be zoned, right? And when the county is now doing the right thing, right? Because they took that land use element and they are putting it into zoning. The city passed one of the best documents I have ever seen. I mean, if you look at it, if anybody studied it, you would say it's amazing what came out of that process. And I swear to God, go look, you'll find me on record many times praising it. So what's happening in the county right now is there was a process where we did the land use element and we set out an amendment to the growth policy. And in early 2022, you all are going to vote on, you're going to vote on that policy and that zoning. Okay, it's going to literally be zoning. So zoning's the strongest element we have, right? This is the strongest way we have to regulate land. So here's my point, is that we in this growth policy, for the city, we never did the zoning piece that you're about to do for the county. And so the most important thing we can do with the growth policy in the city is actually implement it through zoning on the land. And we keep getting requests over and over and over, right? To change this zoning because, oh yeah, it kind of fits the growth policy over here or over there. But nobody systematically changes the zoning in the city. But you're about to do it in the peri-urban area in the county. And it's the absolute right thing to do. I'm sorry, I'll stop now. But you know, I just want to be sure everybody understands that.
Neva, I think you muted yourself and then turned your camera off. Do you want to finish up?
No, I'm good. I just want to express that point, you guys, that like the growth policy. Okay, go back 20 years, maybe 25. I don't know exactly. The state legislature said every city and county had to have a growth policy. It was a good thing, right? You articulate your vision. And then a few legislative sessions later, they said, but you can't make decisions based only on the growth policy. So now, when you guys face or we all face now, decisions we have about subdivisions, for instance, we can't only consider the growth policy. The only way the growth policy becomes real is if we zone it. And which is what you guys, all of us as a community are gonna do, hopefully in the new year, with the good work by Andrew and Jenny and so on. Okay, I'm sorry, Sean, I went on too long, but I was trying to, I feel like an old lady. Well, I am. You know, but the thing is, I just want to let you know, this is, you know what, this is the history on the growth policy. And I'm not to take anything from Ben. He did a very good job. But the growth policy doesn't mean anything unless we rezone. We need to rezone the city. Shane, you know, Josh, you know. Okay, I'm stopping. Good. Thank you for listening, my friends.
Thanks, Steve. And just to respond to that really quick, you know, absolutely, if you look at the timeline of our zoning, we did a major zoning overhaul in 2009. And then we adopted a new growth policy in 2015. And but we're still operating under the zoning that was developed, however many years before that. And so that is informing, I think, the or is part of the impetus for looking at something like this kind of
How many
comprehensive code
years?
reform.
How many years, Ben? How many years before that you just said?
2009 was Title 20.
Okay. A little bit's happened. That's what's hard too. Okay. Thank you.
And I think Dave is the next person with a question.
Thank you. I just want to agree with Neva and just tell you, when I came here 25 years ago to work at Missoula City County, I was shocked how out of sync the zoning and land use was. And so lately, a lot of progress. So staff is doing a good job trying to finally sync it together. So I agree with Neva. That's all I have to say.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. And, I think for my own maybe small part, just to round that off, this is a conversation that we've had on this board many times. And I think Ben pointed it out at the end when talking about code meeting policy, and that we've got a tremendous, a trove of good policy, and we need our code and our zoning to catch up. And I think that's a theme that we've been pushing towards staff and the county, since I've gotten on this board. And my suspicion is, Ben and staff is that we'll continue to push that narrative, because it seems really apparent at this point in time to really be needed. And ideally, city council and the mayor can light a fire and start working on it. Are there any other comments, any other questions for Ben? Anything else we want to speak to under this? Neva, go ahead.
Yeah, just quickly, Sean, in response to what you're saying, if you actually read the growth policy, it is a tremendous document that articulates what a sustainable community could look like. And the final step of moving that from vision to practice was never taken. And I am so proud to have been part of that process 5 years ago. And so, and I'm gonna head off the planning board pretty quick here. So I just want to encourage you to hold their feet to the fire on this, because if you look 5 years ago, we were asked to make spot zoning changes. And, in associate, you guys have been asked to do it too. We're asked to make changes, and they're supposed to match the growth policy. But the reverse never happens, where the city comes to us and says, this is how the zoning should be.
Yeah, it definitely seems we're missing some pieces for sure. And it needs to change.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Neva. Okay, I think that's everything for the communications and special presentations portion of our agenda. Thank you very much, Ben. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for taking the time to listen. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was informative for me. And let's see. So the next part of our agenda, our next line item, is committee reports, which I do not believe we have any at this time.
I don't have a committee report from the TPCC, but I do have a request. There's a TPCC meeting on October 21st. I believe it's at 1:30 in the afternoon, and I will not be able to attend. I'm wondering if there's a planning board member that can attend in my absence.
Is that legit?
Yeah,
Having
they were
somebody-
asking if there's if you can, a lot of folks send proxies if they
Okay,
can't
okay.
attend. So yeah, it's a rescheduled meeting. And because a lot of the county commissioners won't be able to make it at our regularly scheduled meeting. So I said I would ask. If anybody can attend, then that'd be great.
I could do
Ellie,
it.
you got your hand up?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll send Aaron Wilson a note that Ellie can attend, and hopefully he'll get you the right info to get logged into that. So appreciate it.
Thanks.
Hey, Sean.
Great. Thank you very much, Ellie. Appreciate that.
Can
Go
I-
ahead, Neva.
Yeah, can I ask a transportation question that maybe some of you can answer? But we just approved not that long ago about 6,000 or 6,500 units out in the Swipticane area, right? And yet the rapid bus transit that's being proposed goes out Brooks. And there's a lot less residential out there than what we just approved out Broadway. And I would really appreciate a presentation by Aaron or somebody who could explain to us why that is. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to go out Brooks to Bob Ward's, are you going to take a bus? Oh, maybe, or a rapid transit? Yeah, maybe. But really, you're more likely to take it if you're going to be going to work and back. And isn't that what we envisioned for the Swipticane area? So I just love a transportation person to explain that to us. Thank you.
All right. I guess Ellie or Shane, do you guys have a response on whether or not we can bring that to the TPCC? That request?
Yeah, I mean, the person that would have been able to speak to that pretty candidly would be Vince, and obviously he's gone. But I can,
Aaron.
yeah, well, Aaron does the, it's Mountain Line does have a seat on the TPCC, and that's Don MacArthur. And so, I can ask if we could have a presentation from Mountain Line somehow, if it's specifically related to bus transit, because I think that would probably be, in my opinion, that would probably be the best place to start in terms of bus service, because Aaron kind of oversees a lot of things, but what Mountain Line does is pretty specific to I think what your request is.
That sounds terrific, Shane. Let's do that. And I don't mind asking Don myself, or we can farm it out to whoever. But yeah, Don would be terrific. I'd love to hear his views on this, because we just approved 6,500 units out that way, but we're going to build bus rapid transit. And maybe it makes sense because it's going to go to Lolo or whatever. Okay, I'm sorry for going off on this, and I appreciate your comment, Shane.
Neva, I wonder if some of that has to do with the fact that it is a place of employment for a lot of people. So maybe they're doing rapid transit to get people to the employment destinations.
From where? I mean, yeah, that could be.
I actually missed the first presentation, so just offering it out.
No, it could be employment, but usually you think of bus rapid transit about like taking people from the edges into the city to work. But I could be wrong, El.
Well, Shane has offered to ask for a Mountain Lion presentation, and we'll get that
And
lined up and let them tell us. Bailey, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I was gonna kind of with Neva's question and discussion. So I know, so one thing with that, the Swatupkin or however you pronounce it, I'm terrible at pronouncing it. And I apologize to everyone that I can't pronounce that yet very well. So that plan, it didn't approve the units. It basically said, this is where we want to go, right? It's not actually approving those specific units. It's kind of like saying we want this area to develop in this way, and we support plants. So some of what I understand with some of those types of infrastructures like bus routes and things like that is until the actual subdivisions come in and they actually have a plan, they're not going to provide those types of services out there until they actually get it. Now, that being said, this is where we want it to go. And therefore, hopefully Mountain Lion, and I believe it was all hopefully we're part of that discussion, that this is an area that will see growth, but that might be why there isn't anything out there yet, is because we're just starting to see these bigger subdivision applications come in for preliminary plat review. They haven't actually been like lots created yet. But there are a number, actually, I know of a couple more that are actually in the works that hopefully will be coming forward here in the next year or so that are in development. So that I'm just throwing that out there, is that could be where they're not putting their infrastructure, and I say infrastructure like buses, right, routes out there yet, is because there isn't that demand needed yet, but it's coming. And I think that, but I would definitely I would love to have Mountain Lion come, or whoever to come. So I definitely encourage some of that stuff to happen as well. Just comments.
Great. Thank you very much, Bailey. That was
Bailey.
Insightful. Okay, so that's committee reports, I think, and I'm gonna keep moving us forward here. There's no old business that I'm aware of. You can raise your hand if you have some, and if not, we're gonna move on to new business. And under that, we have officer elections. So we need to elect a new president. And ideally, there's at least one person that would like to volunteer for that, or two, or it doesn't matter to me. Or if you want to nominate somebody, go for it. Go ahead, Neva.
Hey, I'd nominate you for president if you're willing. And I'd love to see Ellie elevate to vice president. I don't know that I ever remember when a woman was president of the planning board, and Ellie sure got lots to bring to the position. And so, like, Sean, are you willing to move up to president and have Ellie be vice president?
I'd be willing to consider that. I'd also be willing to say, hey, let's elect Ellie to the president. I'm not sure that at this point, unless somebody like Dave or you wants to like be nominated, maybe Josh, somebody that has like much more experience. I don't see a lot of difference between Ellie and I's experience levels, and I think she would be equally good a president as I would, or not, if not better. And
yeah, and Josh has terrific experience here too, I should add. I'm going off in a couple months, so I'm not volunteering for any of it.
And that's fine, and that's respectable. You've been here a long time.
Yeah, old lady, yeah, I know.
Let's see, I failed to make a list. I'm gonna call Dave next. What do you got there, Dave? I think you're still muted, Dave.
if I'd only get organized here. That's why I shouldn't be present. Anyway, I appreciate that. I think it would be really interesting, and I would like it, but I can't do it. I have some special specific responsibilities here at the house that I can barely fit the planning board into. And you have all sorts of good folks. Planning board will continue on with, there's a lot of breadth of experience. And so, Sean and a new person like Ellie would be, I think that's a nice combination. Somebody with some experience, a new person. Every year or two, you're going to trade off anyway and have new people. It's a good experience for anybody to do. And I encourage both of you to just go for it, to Sean and Ellie. That's my take.
Outstanding. Thanks, Dave. I'm going to go, I didn't see who came up first. I'm going to go to Bailey and then Ellie.
So all I was going to say is, I think, Ellie, are you still a city alternate? Are you not a full member? I think, and I feel like that was the issue that we had trying to find a vice chair as well. And I see Ellie put her hand down and I'm like, okay, maybe that's what you were going to say as well. But I know because Vince was the city appointee. And so I'm not sure what, and maybe Donna knows more too, of trying to figure out how to fill Vince's position, if Ellie can then be elevated to Vince's like full voting position, or what they have to do. Maybe Ellie already knows and can answer, but that was going to be the only issue I was going to say with Ellie being, if she's interested, being elected to something, is that I think she was still an alternate. So that's it.
Okay, that's a very valid point. Ellie, what did you have?
Thank you for the nomination, but I don't think this is the right time for me to step into that role. And I would like to have a little bit more experience. I understand that it's mostly about running the meeting, which is fine. But I would like to pass at this time, and especially with the complications of still being an alternate, I'll hold off.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, so that puts the ball into Shane, Josh, Micah, and Toong's court, I believe. Am I missing Shane? No, I said Shane. I think it heads in that direction. I doubt Andy wants to be. Maybe Andy does want to be president. Go ahead. I think it's Josh.
Yeah, thanks. I was just going to say that it's a responsibility that I can't take on right now, in addition to all the other responsibilities that I know all of us have. But it's, yeah, if there's somebody else that would be willing to do it, that'd be great. I'm happy to support anybody on the board in that role.
All right. Shane, Micah, Toong.
Well, I'd love to hear from Shane because his name was brought up last time as well.
I was wondering who was going to flinch first.
I'd like to nominate Shane. He's an architect. He's got incredible knowledge. He's been on the board for a while. I'd really like to nominate him, and I appreciate Ellie, and you're all great, but Shane's been on for a while. I nominate him.
Go ahead, Shane.
I guess, as I said before, when this kind of came up several months ago, I don't feel like I want to be on the TPCC and be in some sort of leadership role on the planning board. And it's just a little too much time. And if somebody was willing to take on the TPCC role, I would consider a vice chair position if Sean would be willing to move up to chair.
I would
All
happily.
right, negotiations.
I
What was
would
that? I'm
happily-
sorry. I cut you off. Go ahead, Tony.
Sorry, I was gonna say I'd be happy to take on TPCC.
So moved.
Okay, so we're making progress here. Staff, you'll have to help me. Do we need to, can we?
Well, so let me, before we make that commitment, my original thought, and actually Ellie beat me to the punch. If we go down this path, I'm also happy to attend that meeting that Shane can't attend and make that transition, unless Ellie wants to also, unless you would want to continue on that committee as well. So since she did express interest in taking on that meeting.
Okay, great, thanks. That's a good thing. We'll keep that on the table as well. So I guess staff, I'm wondering how we proceed. It kind of seems like, how do we like formally change Shane over, the TPC person over to Tung, and then do we nominate each person? How's that go?
Unless Donna has anything, and I'm not sure, Shane, I'm assuming the planning board voted for you to be their kind of representative member at the TCPT. Did I say that right? Hopefully I said that. I get the acronyms wrong. I'm terrible tonight. But I would assume they kind of voted as you were like, or at least discussed you being the representative on that. So if that's the case, then I would say, yes, you need a motion and a second and all in favor to have Tung take Shane's position. And then you could do that first and then do a motion for Shane, or probably either way. I don't think it really matters, honestly, which way it goes, but yeah. And then make the motion for Shane to do the vice chair, unless Neva has a hand up. I think she made the motion actually already. So we just need a second, really.
Yeah, I move that Tung be appointed the TPCC and Sean become the chair of the planning board, and with Ellie as VP. Is that what I'm not sure where we got on the VP. No, Shane. Is that right?
Yes.
God, all of a sudden
Yes.
it got dark here.
Yeah, you're in the dark there, Neva. We can't see you.
Okay. Well, anyway, it's so moved.
I second that motion.
Okay, so I'll repeat it here just so it's clear. So we have a motion to nominate Tung to the TPCC as our representative, and as well as nominating myself to the president's position, as well as a nomination for Shane to take the vice president's position, which was all seconded by Micah, right? Did I get that right? Great.
Sounds good to me. Donna, did you get that? Hopefully.
Yes, I did. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you all for being willing to serve. I appreciate it.
Now, these new offices are just for the remainder of the year. In January, we do vote again. Just a reminder.
Okay, great. Thanks, Donna. And then, so that's been seconded. We'll just do an up and down vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? It is a unanimous
Just don't,
vote. What?
just don't get too comfy, because we vote again in January. Don't get too comfy in your power roles.
All right, awesome. We got that done. That's a big one. Thank you, folks. There's been some challenges getting our positions filled at times, and we often have to put it off. So I personally greatly appreciate, those efforts and everybody stepping up to the plate, for sure. Let's see. Next line item on the agenda is comments from planning board members. Does anybody have any follow-up comments or last things to say? Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, it's very likely I probably should have raised this in old business, but I wasn't sure, but I'll mention it now. Maybe we can get it on the agenda for old business for an upcoming meeting. But back in March or April, we discussed some concerns around the Highway 93 corridor related to traffic. And I know that recently 750 unit storage project was approved kind of right at an intersection, the intersection of Rowan Road and Highway 93. And I don't know whether it's a good project or a bad project, to be perfectly honest. I have some thoughts about storage facilities, but that aside, it's going to have a traffic impact at a pretty critical location. And maybe Bailey has a little bit more information about that project, why it didn't come to the planning board. And Shane was very gracious in taking this to, I think it was it TPCC, Shane, and got it to the DOT. And to be perfectly honest, we got a canned public relations response, that they'll continue to analyze data, and there's some upcoming projects and yada yada. And at the time, I wasn't really happy with that response, but I figured, we'll see what happens. This new project has kind of rekindled that fire in me. And so, in a future meeting, if we could have some discussion about that and how we could continue to possibly elevate that issue, I would appreciate that, because it's just going to bring more traffic. 750 unit storage facility is a big one, and it's right at a critical intersection. And I would probably be happier than heck to have that storage facility there if it gets us a light or a roundabout or a reduction in the speed limit. So just wanted to throw that out there, that that's still top of mind for me and a lot of the folks who live in southern Missoula County.
Absolutely. And Josh, remind me, didn't we also want to draft a letter of concern or something? Weren't we going to draft a letter or try and put something formally towards DOT?
Or to the county commissioners? I can't recall. I do remember us, discussing that. Something to that effect.
Think what maybe we should do is we'll ask staff to put this on for old business on the next agenda, and we can rehash this out a little bit and see if we can come up with a fresh approach to making our concerns at least noted, and keep trying to push people's feet to the fire.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Neva, your hand's up.
I think Mike is ahead of me, but my question related to Josh's, which really is, whatever happened to Alexandra Estates, which was a lot of houses that were going to go in and just link into 93 as well, and what the safety concerns there should be part of the discussion. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Micah, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question for staff, probably Donna, about replacement of, committee or board members that have left. So Vince leaving. Is there a timeline for when applications will be accepted, or what will that look like? And then also, if there are people that are going off the planning board in January, when will applications be accepted?
Okay, because Vince's position is a city one, not a county. And I believe, let's see, who is with the city I think they already have it out on their website, but that's being taken care of by, let's see, I think Marty Rabine, Megan Staten, but it's all with the city. And I believe it's already on the city website. And I'm not sure how soon they want to fill it, or if they want to wait till the end of Vince's term, which was the end of this year. I really don't know, but check, you might even try the mayor's office and they would have more details. And I know a lot of terms are also up at the end of this year, and those that will be asked by the city or the county, depending on where your appointment came from, if you're interested in staying on or what your plans are. But that will come down the line in November, as far as I know.
Thanks, Donna.
So along those lines, is there a provision for the alternates to automatically be put on as full-time members, or do they have to apply? Is it a completely separate position? That was, I think we were, I think, wondering if Ellie gets elevated automatically or not.
You have
I
to.
don't. Do you have a good answer, Bailey?
This is Neva. I think you have to apply.
Yeah.
But of course, a lot of consideration is given to those who have served as alternates, is my understanding.
Yeah, that's my best understanding as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's because to elevate a position, like an alternate position, it still takes either the city council or county commissioners because they're the ones appointing them to that full position. And so I think you still have to like put your name in the ring, right? Or hat in the ring for it. And then, but generally what I have seen too is, yeah, the alternates usually, as long as they've been good alternates, right? We all they usually, yeah, they kind of are a little higher on the list, I guess you could say. If Ellie wants to be a full member, maybe she does, maybe she enjoys the alternate. I don't know.
It's true. Okay. Is there any other comments or discussion before, because we can round this up and call it a night, I think. Okay, I am not seeing anything, so I am going to call tonight's meeting to adjournment. Thank you, everybody, for being here, and our next meeting is on the 19th, I believe.
Thanks, Sean.
You're welcome. Thank you, Neva. Have a good night, everyone.
Night, everybody.
Bye.